Welcome to the Bloom Where You're Planted podcast from Never Too Late Cafe. I'm your host, Laura Womack. Each week, we sit down for a chat with someone just like you, someone who had an idea, a passion, a dream, or sometimes just a thought, and planted that seed, watched it grow into something they wanted to share with the world. If you have an idea for a topic or someone that would be a guest for the Bloom Where You're Planted podcast, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, where you can join our Never Too Late Cafe Facebook group. We'd love to hear from you. Today I have with me a special guest, Julie Wangler. Hi, Julie.
Hi.
And welcome. So
Thank you.
I'm just going to say that I know you from your lovely campground on the Ohio River. And since this podcast isn't just in this local region, we're going to kind of go back because your story is so fascinating to me of how you ended up here. And it's all about the Bloom Where You're Planted concept. So can you take me back to where you lived before and what you did before? And then we'll work our way up to how you got here.
Well, I'm originally from North Dakota. I had varying jobs until I met my husband. And then we had decided, well, at the time that I met him, I was a 911 dispatcher for a rural county in North Dakota. And after we married and a few years later, while I was dispatching, my husband had suffered from some anxiety and panic attacks, and he wanted me to join him to take a Reiki course. And I was like, Reiki, what is that? Like, I have no clue, but sure, I'll do it, if it'll help you. Well, that just started a whole, once you start with energy healing, you just can't stop. For some people, I always knew I had something in me with the energy related, but I didn't know what until we had actually gone and taken the Reiki class. And after that, I became a Reiki master, and then I decided to open up my own business. And I'd actually started it in the small town we lived in. And I had gone on to take a bunch of different energy modalities, but then I ended up also doing reflexology to get my license in North Dakota. And so about 2 years into starting my business, I had done it part-time on the side with also doing the 911 dispatching. We ended up moving to his family farm, which was a small community. So in where I started my business, it was about 14,000 people. And so I had actually built up a clientele already there. And when we moved to a town of one was about 700 people. And then there was another one about 30 miles away, which is about 1,000 people. And so
you were kind of out there.
Yeah. And it was a strict, a very, I shouldn't say closed community, because there were several people with open minds that I did find while I was there. But I was moving into a place that not very many people had experienced energy healing and what it meant. So it was sort of on me, and to try to bring that to all of them there. And as we did, I gained very many friends, which I miss very dearly before moving here. But so we farmed, and then I also I actually opened up in a salon there and had my own space. And and I built my business from there again. And I also bought a bus so I could travel back to the original place where I'd opened my business. So I had the essential bus, is what I called it.
Oh,
and
cool.
I traveled there with my bus, and I would do appointments in the bus at first, but then I also hooked it up with one of my massage therapist friends And I end up doing appointments at her place in the winter time, so I didn't have to worry about, because North Dakota winters aren't very friendly for campers or buses or anything. So yeah, so
So
I
you
just have
had an energy bus.
yeah. We actually even took it to Salt Lake City one time, but in the end, I wanted to bring it down here, and they all would have seen it here, but in Ohio, but it ended up having engine troubles, and I had to get rid of it. So I was very sad, but it's very cool.
So reflexology, to go back a little bit, that is, can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, basically, I always say that, chiropractors work on your bones, adjusting your bones, massage therapists work on your muscles, and reflexologists work on your nerves. So they all kind of go hand in hand together. And what you do is you actually work on the feet or the hands, or you can do the ears, but you work on the nerves to try to get the body to flow properly again. A lot of times you can be adjusted or have a massage, but you still have pain. And what's happened is crystals will have built up on your nerves. And if you don't allow, it's basically like a whole like the central nervous system. If it doesn't flow properly, it's not going to work properly. And so most of the time I just worked on people's feet, but I also did hand reflexology. I was certified in both, but yeah.
And then Reiki is the energy part.
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, yeah, you have the energy side of things, which you also can have a blockage in your energy system. And if it's not, if it's not flowing properly, you're out of balance as well. And so like a lot of times when you're doing Reiki, you'll find those spots and be able to help move, or have the energy help move that blockage out and release it, so that you can feel great again.
So I didn't know your journey started by your husband, wanting you to get involved with Reiki. That's very interesting. In fact, seems like backwards what I know of a lot of people that have done energy work, so anyway, that's very interesting. I started being interested in the holistic health side of things from having a health issue like in the 80s. And a friend took me to this place a couple of hours away, and there was a man that had treated people from all over the world, had their pictures all over his walls. And he was an MD, but he also became a naturopath. And so it's just always been fascinating to me. So okay, so you had a business and you traveled with it some, and you were on the farm. So what was the next step for you?
Well, for us, the farm was not was not our dream. We had originally thought that we could live and stay there happily, but it didn't work out that way for us. And so, because Darcy was struggling so much with his anxiety and stuff, we needed to find something, but we knew that it wasn't a mainstream type of job for him, just because, the anxiety and stuff was just too much to hold down, or work for somebody. I mean, he was working for a farmer way back when, which was a good fit for him, but he really did not want to go back into any farming at all. So we started trying to find, something that would work for us, that wouldn't be so, I guess, crazy for him. And he could, a lot of times when you visit our campground, I'm the one that people see, me or my parents, but you don't really see Darcy unless you need something. And so we needed something that he could be laid back and low key. And so we had actually started searching for campgrounds about 2 to 3 years previous to buying this campground. And we had actually found one we loved in Minnesota, but the stars didn't align. It wasn't the one that was meant for us, And so we continued our journey looking, and about 2 years later, I'd actually seen this campground online. It'd been for sale for about 3 years previous online before we'd actually even come to look at it. But he did a price drop reduction, and Darcy didn't even come to look at it. So it was me and my parents and my sister-in-law and my niece. My brother would have came, but he had just passed away a month before we came to look at the place. And so it
Oh,
was, yeah, it was a bit of a journey, I would say, because it was my sister-in-law who was married to him and his daughter that came with, and Daniel came with too, my son. But so it was quite a healing journey because we traveled through Michigan and went to family, and then we came down and we looked at this place, and we ended up putting an offer after coming, and we're like, holy moly, it's a fixer upper. But you know, it's always just about adapting, and um, it ended up being a perfect fit for us, even though there's a lot of work, and um, I can't imagine a more beautiful, peaceful place than we have landed. It is. I wake up every morning, I'm like, do I really live here? Because it's just
I've
peaceful.
seen some of your posts like you live in paradise, and I agree. It's well, you're in. Is it technically Stout?
The mailing address is Stout, but it's a small village named Sandy Springs. It does not have anything but a couple churches that are actually now houses, and a couple of other houses and some cemeteries. But Sandy Springs is the closest thing. But Buena Vista is only 2 miles from us as well. So, but yes, the address is actually Stout.
So this is west of Portsmouth, Ohio, which is straight down from Columbus, the capital. So um,
Yeah, we're 20
and
miles west.
yeah, and you're right on the Ohio River.
Yes,
And I have to say, I was born in Portsmouth and lived there till I was 8, lived in Springfield, Ohio till I was 18, moved back again. And I never thought about the Ohio River of being a place that I wanted to really hang out. It just, but I tell you, the first time I visited there, I saw the water on your little beach area and it was clear. And I never thought of the Ohio River as being that clear. I mean, I could see shells in the sand of the water, which it's very, I didn't know that was that clear.
yeah,
So,
sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It just depends on the time of year. And I actually was hoping that this rain that we had here last yesterday, and then they're supposed to get a little bit today, that will help clean up. Because as you get, I mean, right now it's a little bit green, but as we go through the season, it clears up, and kids actually play in the water, which some people are like, oh, I never play in there. But I mean, I grew up swimming in lakes that had pastures around them, and so I'm really not that afraid to jump into anything. I swam in the biggest dam in North Dakota, which is Garrison, and they have fish bigger than houses, which from what they say I've never seen. So,
oh my,
but even
that sounds like
kayaking,
Jaws.
yeah, even they say the guys that go down to like do maintenance on the dam, they come up and they're like, nope, never going down again. But that's the only things I've heard, um, but I love to, I've kayaked a few times out there on the river. You just have to make sure that the river's down to pool level, but it's so unreal to get out in the middle and just see, of course you don't want to be out there when the barge is coming, but um, it's just so unreal to get out there and see it's a whole different perspective, once you get out there. So it's gorgeous.
So tell me about why a campground? I mean, you could have gone to any number of businesses and things that might have been relaxing and not as stressful, but how did a campground come about?
Um, well, the funny thing is I actually had a dream when we were thinking about the different businesses. And I actually had a dream that we owned a campground with some cabins but I dreamt it was on a lake, but I knew it was a body of water. So it was a little bit of a different. And so I went to Darcy. I said, what do you think about a campground? Because we love to camp. We actually, when we moved down here, we brought 3 campers down with us. So, I mean, we actually owned 2, but then I ended up acquiring another one along the way. And so we actually brought 3 down. And it just, my parents, when we were very young, they took us camping. And all I remember, we went to this place called Smokey's Landing. And we'd always go into the little store and we'd buy the penny and the nickel candy and, buy the food at the little camp store. And we'd hang out with the owners at night around their campfire. And I just remember always it being so relaxing and so laid back. Of course, being an owner, as I know now, it's a bit of a different equation, but it's still a lot of people will ask us if we want to expand and that kind of stuff. And we really don't want to get any bigger because we bought the campground lifestyle to relax, to enjoy life. And when we have a cancellation or somebody has to change it, we take it as the universe giving us a sign that it's really not a bad thing. It's just we possibly needed a different or needed more relaxation, if things happen. So we just try to go with the flow and know that we will be provided for. One thing I would say though is definitely do not sweat the small things, which I tend to do a lot. So I have my pet peeves, and that's the hardest thing for me is to not sweat it and take things personally. It's just really, but yeah, that's why a campground. I'm sorry. I kind of went off subject there a little bit, but
Oh no, exactly. And your parents not to get your parents to come, but how it all came about that they joined you on this journey here.
Well, they actually, they're not spring chickens, so they were traveling between Texas and North Dakota, and they live in their fifth wheel. So they would summer in North Dakota where he would work for my uncle, and then they would go down to Texas where they would winter all year, and they would take their fifth wheel and drive back and forth. And I wanted to find a place where they could stay all year if they wanted to. So they still actually own their property in Texas, but they haven't been there for 3-4 years now. But when we first came here, that's kind of like what settled it for me. Other than Darcy had said the one requirement was that he could see out. And so from our house, you can look and there's a soybean field next to us. So I said, hey, there's a soybean field next to us. So he was like, all right, well, my dad, we were down by the river. And I'm like, well, what do you think, Dad? I'm like, it's quite the fixer-upper. I mean, if you've seen the before and after, it's been work since we got here. But he stood on the riverbank and he looked one way and then he looked the other. And he said, if I could buy this place right now, I would. And so that really just, since I knew that they would be comfortable, that really just even sealed the deal even more. And then it wasn't roses after that, because we actually put in our offer and 3 offers came in behind it. And so we just had to let go and, hope that ours was the one that was picked, and it was. So we were very happy about that.
For a property that was on the market for 3 years and then several offers to come in at the same time, it's like,
I know.
It was a little test.
Right. I think it was because of the price drop, it attracted more people and it just made it more affordable for more people. And so then that's why more came in.
So where your office is and the store, was that already there?
No, I actually was. Yeah. So we've moved in 1, 2, 3, 4 things with the boat now. And plus our house, there's another one, but we've moved in several things. Like if you've you've been here, but the office was not here. The office came from by Flemingsburg. We moved it in. I actually facilitated that from North Dakota. My parents were here, and they, yeah, they were here for it to move in, and I got lucky and found a wonderful mover. Our house got moved in when we were not here. The old house got moved off, and we had bought a repossessed mobile home that came in that was newer, and that got moved in before we were here. My mom had cleaned it all for me and left a nice note that she'd cleaned it all before when we got here. So that was really nice. And then, the Pawpaw cabin that was moved in, and that was moved in from the Minford area. It was up on a hillside. It was a hunting cabin.
And it's a tiny house, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the tiny house. It's a 2-room cabin. And when it didn't come without its challenges, because when we bought it, we ended up having to tear off the front porch up there, and they also had a little add-on in the back, and it was nailed together with these massive nails. They were, I don't know. So that was quite the chore. But then when we did finally, it sat there for months before it got moved, which it just was the weather. It ended up being taller than we thought it was. So we ended up having to pay for a double police escort to bring it in. Yeah, that's all. That actually is all on our, YouTube channel if you ever want to see a small house. And then we also moved in the houseboat, and that's also out there. And that's a 40-foot houseboat that we're now turning into a cabin. So that was also moved in, and that's quite the story as well. And then our maple cabin also was moved in, and that got moved in from Maysville. There used to be a ATV course over there, and they had a zip line. That was the zip line office for that place. And so we ended up bringing that in and rebuilding it and redoing the whole thing. So yeah, so I mean, we're always my husband doesn't like it, but I'm always thinking and doing different things. So,
well, did you guys always have the skills to, you remodel all of these things and put on lighting and porches and decks? And did you always have those skills? I mean,
I will say the deck skills are my dad's. Like my dad, he has built literally every deck except for the maple cabin. We actually had a local guy build that one. But for the Pawpaw decks and our deck, the one I'm sitting on now, the office deck, we actually moved in what we call the bird's nest that's right behind our house. That's actually like our laundry facility and our extra guest room. The laundry for our linens for all of our rentals is now washed in there instead of being in our guest laundry. And so we actually have that just got moved in. He built the decks on that as well. He built the deck around. So yes, my dad is a deck man.
He's a deck man.
Yeah, my mom gets frustrated with me because even as like my dad had a woodworking shop in our basement. And when I'm talking basement, it was like an old farmhouse basement that part of it was a cistern, and it was just dark and damp, and just he went down there and he did his woodworking. He would build things, and I would always go down there and I would want to help him more than I'd want to learn to cook or sew and that kind of stuff. So she'd get mad at me. So yeah, when there's a project, we just learn. I mean, we have watched a lot of YouTube videos, I'll tell you that. But if we can't do it, we always just try to search out somebody in the community that can do it. But most of the things we can do. So,
well, it's
not always have not always had those skills.
Well, I gotta say the boat is fascinating, and I'll have to post pictures and links for everyone to look at, because is it like a tugboat?
No, it's a houseboat. It's
okay.
It's a Harbor Master. I think it's an 87. And you want to hear the story of the boat?
Absolutely.
It's really crazy. So we actually, when I came up with the idea, I had found a boat for sale on Facebook. And when I had started messaging the fella, it was because the the reason it attracted me was because it was for $7,000. The boat was $7,000. And I was like, I could make a cabin out of that. Like, I was like, that's so cool. How cool would that be to put, and it had engine issues. And so he's like, well, I don't know what's wrong with it. You know, it probably could be a simple fix, could not, but that's why the price was what it was. And he was tired of paying for storage because he was tired of tinkering with it and he didn't want to put any more money in it. So I convinced my parents to go look at it with me. And it was across from Cincinnati on the Kentucky side at a marina. It was dry docked. And so we climbed up in it, and it was a bit musty smelling, but it was so cute. It was like light colors. It was beautiful. And so I finally got Darcy agreed to go look at it, but he wouldn't climb up in it because he's afraid of heights. So he just looked at the outside and he's like, well, if you really like it, we'll do it. So then became the process of finding movers. And so we had explored all options, which I had originally thought you'd have to move it up the river. I don't know why I never thought about moving on land, but eventually I got a hold of a marine out of Cincinnati and they said, well, the smartest thing is to move it on land. But they told me, they quoted me a price to move it. And I was like, okay, well, we'll get something scheduled. I'd actually talked the guy down to, I believe it was 5,500 on the boat. Well, the night before we were supposed to go meet him to buy the boat, I was sleeping in my camper because I have a camper down in the campground that I call my cabin. And I was sleeping down there, and all of a sudden I got woke up at like 3 or 4 in the morning by a mouse stuck in a trap. And the minute I opened my eyes, I heard, "Don't buy the boat." I was like, as I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go find this mouse. And so the whole time, like, don't buy the boat. Why shouldn't I buy the boat? Like, you know, like that's all I heard was don't buy the boat. So then when I get up, there was no mouse in the trap, just so you know. I have no idea what woke me up, but it wasn't a mouse. So that's what I thought it was, but it was not. There was no mouse and it wasn't tripped. So anyways, so
Maybe a dream. Maybe a dream.
I was wide awake. Well, so then
Okay.
I'm like, huh. And I was like, I couldn't sleep after that. And so I finally went up and about 8:30 and woke Darcy up. And I'm like, so we're not going to get the boat. And he's like, what? Like, okay. I said, well, I'll tell you, I got woke up and I heard, don't buy the boat. And he goes, well, that's funny because I heard don't buy the boat. And I was like, what the heck? You know, so I'm like, well, obviously it's a sign we're not supposed to get the boat. And so I was going to call because we had actually already scheduled the move and everything. And I was going to call the marine that afternoon. I actually messaged the guy and said, I'm so sorry. Like it just is not going to work out. We are not going to buy the boat. I said, we don't ever do that. Like where we back out of things, but this is like legit. We have to because, you know, well, before I could call the marine, before I could call them, they called me and they're like, did you buy the boat? And I'm like, no, I was going to call you and tell you we're going to cancel the move. And they're like, well, that's good that you didn't buy the boat because we have a boat for you. And I was like, what? They're like, we were moving this boat and the stringer broke and it made it a salvage boat. And so if you want this boat, it's yours for the cost of moving it. I was like,
oh my gosh. What?
I was like, what? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, is it a piece of junk? Like, can I come see it? And she's like, well, yeah, you can come see it. It's up in the sling. Well, I had to get there within like a short amount of time. So me and my dad hopped in and went and looked at the boat, and the boat was in better shape than the first boat. I was like, so after a bunch of stuff and they took the engines out and all that, we now have a boat, and it's got I don't know if you've been here since the deck's been put on, but
you are working on it.
Okay.
But I haven't. Yeah, I haven't seen it completed or anything.
Okay, so yeah, it now looks like it's docked. That's the way we made it. So it looks like it is docked on land. So the boat is probably, I'm hoping, about a month out from being completed. So hopefully shorter than that, but my dad has the plumbing in it. and the electricals in it. And so we're just waiting on an air conditioning repairman, and I got to do all the remodeling and painting and all that and laying floor. But yes, the boat will hopefully be done soon. So.
Well, I can say you have a real knack for the decorating of the cabins and the campers that you have as rentals. You really have a knack. So, and it must be fun.
Sometimes we actually are down to 2 camper rentals now. We actually sold 2 this spring. So we are actually moving out of the campers as much as we can and moving into cabins and a boat, I guess.
So how big is the boat inside?
We are unsure how many it'll sleep yet, but it actually has the galley, which is where the kitchen, and it does have like a pull-out sofa type thing that's up there originally built in. And that's where the dining will also be. And then you can step down a few steps into, it's like a living area, but we are going to make that into like a bedroom area because it's easier to access. And then it has a bathroom down there as well. And then underneath the like I think it's called the galley, whatever, the where you drive the boat. That actually is another bedroom down in there, but you have to be willing to sleep in a cave to sleep down there. There are two exit points, so it's safe. It's just that you do have to crawl kind of to get in there. So, but the kids will love that part.
Oh, I'm sure. It's like it'd be their choice.
Right. So that's what it is at this moment. Yep. So it'll have a bit more outdoor space because it has the decks and stuff that we will add seating areas, places to sit and stuff around, but it's really cool.
Very
we
cool.
won't be having access to the top though, because we don't have any way to make the railing safe up on the top. So the top, unfortunately, a lot of people want to go up on the roof deck, but at this moment we can't make it happen. But we will still always explore the ideas of it. So it's just each time that we've moved, it's just been a challenge to try and thrive in those locations. And so I always just had, say you always have to look for something that's not being done and then do it yourself. So that's a lot of people, they want to compare themselves to the people around them, or they want to compete with the people around them. And we just want to work with the people around us. So like if you think of companion planting or blooming, you want to gather the people around you and to make you stronger. And that's really the culture that I want to be in. So like I reach out to the different campgrounds around me, and we try to I try to support them and try to get them to support me the best that we can, and not get into the competitive mode. And so that's how I bloom, is I reach out and I grab on to other team members to help us grow and expand. And it's much more fun to work together than it is to fight each other. Or so I hope that we all, like all of us around us, can have that mentality where we just support each other, and even with like the small store that's up the road, I'd rather let them blossom at what they do and not compete with them, and sell the same, we do have convenient stuff, but they make pizzas. And so I don't know if that's the best answer, but it's just just blooming, making the best of what you have and not trying to drown others in the process, I guess. So
wonderful concept. So what words of wisdom, I call it now, wow, because when someone looks back on this and hears, you might have some words that might help someone down the road. So when I think of words of wisdom, what would you give to someone that wants to do what you've done? or is doing?
It's kind of funny because we've actually had a few people that have come to find out about owning a campground. You know, they've actually gone on and bought their own campgrounds. And so we've had, they've come and they're like, what do you suggest? What do you know, and I guess the like I touched on it earlier, but it's really not to take something personally. And that is the one thing that I would suggest is, you know, you just, of course you want to stick to your rules, but you also have to pick your battles. So, um, you know, if it's, I always have to think in my head, is that really going to cause harm, or is that really going to matter in the long run? And if it doesn't, then don't pick that battle and don't take it personally. So that's, and then also make sure you take a lot of me time. So when you can, make sure you're taking care of yourself, make sure you're getting your time away from, if you can possibly get, you know, we actually do what are called fun day Mondays. Now, fun day Monday doesn't always mean that we get away from the property, but we also can retreat into our house and just not think about our business for the day. Because if you're always going, you will burn out, and you burn out quickly. And so if you want to be the best for your people and your customers, it's just so much better to take that downtime and be away, which my parents being here really helps us with that equation, because we always have somebody here on the property no matter what. We don't ever leave alone. So it's but it's very important to get that time. And also one other thing too, make sure you get a team. we actually have people that help us. I have somebody that helps me clean, you know, and that was the biggest blessing for me this year. That was my one wish, was to actually get somebody to help me clean. And I literally could cry, because she's one of our monthly guests and she is excellent. And I could cry about it because that was my one wish, and my biggest stress was cleaning, because there's so many hats that I wear, but that was just another thing. But that was my one wish, and I got it. And if you can, and that's always like, even when I was a supervisor, you're only as good as your team, you know, you really are. If you don't have people underneath you that can help you thrive, even let them outshine you, you won't. I truly believe in my heart that I would not be here without my team. That includes my husband, my parents, our camp hosts. We actually have some part-time camp hosts now that help us, and also the one that helps me clean. They help us do events. I mean, it's so important. They are gold to me. So
And your son helps you.
yes, and Daniel, how could I forget? He's magnificent. If you know, he helps me run my office, and so he's only 13, and he's in there and he is running my office for me, which probably sounds crazy to a lot of people, but it is so fun to hear all the compliments and praise that I get about him, how professional he is, and you know how he's strict about the rules.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know where
He's thorough. He's very thorough, and you know, gets the map and shows you where your site is, and you know, he's got the pitch down. But that's amazing. He is learning such responsibility and skills that, you know, he'll always have with him. So what do you think is next for you?
It depends on if you ask me or you ask my husband. If it was my husband, he'd be like, nothing, we're not doing anything for 2 years once that boat's done. But that's the biggest thing, is that the boat gets done. As for that, other than that, we are going to try to improve our boat ramp. We'd like to get a dock put in. If you know any good grant writers, send them my way, because I'd really love to get a grant. But we that's kind of our next focus. We did really want to put in a splash pad, but we've had more people ask us about the boat dock, getting a boat dock and just improving that area. And we also need to get the front riverbank stabilized even more. So that's kind of where the direction that we're heading. So
Yeah, for anyone that's not familiar with the Ohio River, it does flood several times a year, usually. And sometimes it can be devastating. So you have to be really prepared for some of those things. And I know that you guys are, and you've always keep improving. And so before I forget, your campground is Sandy Springs Campground and Cabin Rentals.
Yep. It's Sandy Springs Campground, and we do have cabin rentals with it. Yep. I just added that on so people knew. But
right.
Yes, it's actually Sandy Springs Campground.
Well, Julie, it's been a pleasure having you. I've always been intrigued about your story. You came from North Dakota to Southern Ohio and run this fantastic campground that, a friend of mine got me started going there a couple of years ago. And I never realized that I would enjoy camping on the river. And I might say our first experience is that there was a rainstorm the first night and our tent blew down because it was a storm. We ended up in the back of my van, which wasn't comfortable, but thank goodness other things have happened since then that let me know that it's a wonderful, peaceful place. So I'm sure you got your wish for Darcy that he has a peaceful place. Well, again, thank you so much. And as things change and you have events coming up, maybe we can chat again sometime and just keep us updated on your progress and things that go on. And I appreciate your time with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Bye-bye now.
Bye.